Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 517 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ialon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our fifth book just came out. It's called Perseverance and How to Be a Great Fraternity or Sorority Alumnus. So I want you to go and pick up that book on Amazon or Barnes& Noble today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, I am always learning new things. As I get closer to finishing my doctorate, the one thing that I've learned is that I know absolutely nothing. The world has so much to offer us, and I continue to learn new things every single day, even as I approach my 50th birthday. So understand that even though I regularly speak on alcohol and drug abuse prevention on college campuses, I know very little when it comes to fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So I wanted to bring in an expert today to tell us a little bit more about it so I can learn. Chris Troutt is a Christian family therapist who brings a unique background to her clients. She and her late husband, Burt, are parents to 12 children and have 25 grandchildren. That is incredible. Chris is a biological mother, an adoptive mother, a stepmother, and a foster mother as well. She brings both education and personal perspective into therapy. Chris believes strongly in systems theory and the power of God working in a person's life. It is her desire to help others during their journey. And Chris specializes in prenatal exposure to alcohol and drugs, trauma, and attachment disorders. So her work with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders is especially meaningful to her as a parent of a child who was diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome. Chris has a master's degree in marriage and family therapy from Trevecca Nazarene University right here in Nashville, Tennessee. And Chris is the co-founder and CEO of the Papillion Center for FASD with offices in Gallatin and also in Paducah, Kentucky as well. And she speaks nationally and internationally on understanding children and families from hard places, including fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Of course. All right. And listen, it is my pleasure because, again, today I get to learn a little bit more. And that is something that I'm just a lifelong learner. So today I'm going to learn something, and I always appreciate that. So tell us a little bit more about this. I mean, you're the co-founder and CEO of the Papillion Center for FASD. You have offices here in Tennessee and in Kentucky. What exactly is FASD? And tell our audience why you're so passionate about this particular cause.
Sure. Well, let me start with it's the Papillon Center. And the reason it's the Papillon Center is that it is the struggle against the cocoon. Papillon is French for butterfly. And
Mm,
it's the struggle against the cocoon that gives the butterfly the opportunity to fly.
got it.
Without the struggle, it will not fly. So FASD is fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, and it is the leading cause of developmental disabilities. And what happens is that when you're pregnant, if you ingest alcohol, alcohol is a teratogen. So
Mhm.
it goes straight through to the baby in utero, and whatever is developing at the time is going to be impacted by that alcohol use.
Mhm.
There are varying degrees, and that's part of what makes it so complicated, is that it's not a real clear cut. If I drink exactly this amount at exactly this time, that exactly this is what happens, because there are so many factors in it. It can be based on the health of the father
Mm,
and the quality of the father sperm, right? It can be based on how healthy mom is, how many children she's had. They call it mother's weathering, which is a lovely way to talk about the older we get.
right.
Weathering quite along right now. But the CDC reports that 1 in 20 students have been prenatally exposed to alcohol and are impacted. So you can have something as mild as maybe anxiety and or ADHD, or
Mhm.
you could go all the way to the other end of the spectrum and really struggle with even the ability to talk or walk, or like my child have a severe heart condition, musculoskeletal issues. It's just simply whatever is developing at the time can be impacted by that.
Wow. Okay, well, listen, I'm learning something new today. This is really, really interesting. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about was trauma because I talk about hazing prevention on college campuses all the time. I'm very passionate about it because we just don't know what trauma the students have been through prior to them even arriving on a college campus. So, can you explain the realities of neurobiological outcomes for trauma in a child's life?
Sure, sure. Well, what happens is that the brain never forgets.
Hmm.
So we might not have conscious memory of something, but our brain never forgets. So anything that happens in front of us will often tag on to anything that has happened behind us, right? And so if we're a child from a hard place, then a traumatic event could be something that's simple, but our brain has tagged on to that, right? And has made it feel very big and very debilitating. That neurochemical reaction is that we're created in such a way that our neurochemistries are supposed to go up, our excitatory neurochemistries are supposed to go up whenever we've been alerted or we have a need or there's an instance that we need to arise for, right? And then the inhibitories are supposed to bring us back down. The unfortunate thing is that if you're a child from a hard place earlier on, particularly, then your excitatories have had much more practice than your inhibitories. So instead of baselining at what we would call kind of a normal baseline, you tend to baseline high, which means it takes less for you to become upset or it takes less for you to feel very anxious, less in front of you, right? That can tag on because the brain is just simply a muscle memory.
Mm. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that. That's really important stuff. The other thing too is I talk about sexual assault prevention on college campuses. And I think, one of the things that I like to talk about too is that healing is possible. So talk about that. What are some of the opportunities to heal after trauma at a young age?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, ideally, you want to work with a trained professional that understands trauma, that
Hmm.
that's something that they specialize in because
Hmm.
it's really important to help the client to understand what's going on with their brain. Often there is a struggle, an internal struggle that they maybe are feeling like they just can't overcome something, but if they can understand that their brain's hijacking them, then it's helpful for that. So I always encourage anyone, if you've been through any traumatic events in your life, it never hurts to talk to someone who understands that, understands what's going on in the brain, and then gives those inhibitory neurotransmitters a chance to work. So we go up and we come back down and we build up the muscle memory.
That's really good. And of course, all of the college students listening, they have access to the counseling center on their college campus. And you're paying for that, by the way, for those people to work in that office. So you might
Right.
as well use those resources. That's like my one regret that I have as an adult is I never really took advantage of the counseling center on a college campus. I really didn't discover counseling and therapy and the benefits of that until I was an adult. And I feel like that was a mistake. Like I should have probably started earlier.
Well, I love
So,
that it's become normalized, right? I mean,
yeah,
at the time it wasn't so
it wasn't.
normalized, but it
No, it
is.
was really looked down on. And if you were hanging out in, that area of the college campus, somehow you were looked upon as like you're broken somehow. But
Right.
now as an adult, I think the exact opposite.
I think so too. I think so too. I love it. Yeah.
Unbelievable. The other thing too is a lot of the college students who are listening right now, they're in fraternities and sororities. So that means that they are living in a community. They're living in a house that has a lot of other brothers, a lot of other sisters that are around, which I think is helpful. So that way, if somebody is struggling, then they can look out for that particular person. So, what are some of the common warning signs that a college student might need to, seek help for something having to do with mental health? I mean, can you point out what those warning signs might be?
Sure, sure. Well, sleep, in college life, sleep can be a challenge anyway, right?
Yeah.
But when you simply have so much sleep disturbance that you're just not able to get enough sleep, you really want to look at that because that's when the brain heals,
Hmm.
right? Is that opportunity our brain and our body heals with that. If you feel very hyper vigilant, that you're nervous anytime you walk into a room, there's a sense of hopelessness, fears around every corner, those sort of things are are highlights. And there's multiple things that you can look at, but if we're not addressing them, then every relationship in your life is going to be impacted by that. And what I would encourage everyone to do is to have at least one safe person that is their go-to person that can be that accountability person for them, that would say, you know what, like you don't seem like yourself, and
Hmm.
maybe it's time to get some extra help.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really helpful. Really good stuff. I was reading Jonathan Haidt's book just last week, and he was talking about if you want mental health issues, and all you need to do is basically remove people's sleep, number one, and then number two, constantly distract them with, pings all day long where you're getting notifications on your phone, every 30 seconds. And all of that over time really has an impact on that. I mean, are you buying into that as well, that the cell phones and social media and things like that has had an impact on mental health?
I think it's had a tremendous impact on mental health,
Yeah.
particularly in our younger generation. We are the most connected generation that has ever existed on the planet,
Hmm.
and considered the most lonely.
Hmm.
And there's something's wrong with that, right? Is that we're
Hmm.
connected and yet we're very lonely because social media, Facebook, Instagram, doesn't matter what it is, right? Like we may have lots of friends on there, but they're not true friends that we're sitting down and actually looking at in the eye and having a conversation with.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that our self-image can really be impacted by social media, and we have
Hmm.
to be really careful of that. And I know that college age is really when we're trying to differentiate from our folks and we're trying to figure out who we are, but it's really helpful to do that, even setting down and think about what do I want to be in the future and how does the cell phone or the social media platforms that I'm on contribute to that.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really, really helpful stuff. I've really started to rethink social media completely. And now I'm starting to feel guilty as a parent because I allowed my kids to have, a tablet and things like that. And now I look back on it and I'm like, what was I doing? Like, did I have an impact on my kid? You
Yeah.
know? Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
it's real common, and even the research that's being done with the brain development and such, particularly at a young age,
Yeah.
because they make easy babysitters, right? We hand them a tablet, we hand them our cell phone.
Hmm.
It takes care of the children for a little while, but it's really having quite an impact overall.
Yeah, I believe that it has for sure. The other thing too we should talk about is rejection because I know that's certainly a part of the college experience, from grades to relationships. It's interesting, my daughter, she's brilliant. She's going to Rice University in Houston, Texas, and I'm super proud of her and just how smart she is. But I remember her going through the college application process and her getting rejected. I think this was the first time in her life that she's ever had any rejection. Like everything just kind of came easy to her, if you know what I mean. And then suddenly she's rejected. And then I'm like, oh my God, this is the first time in her life that she's ever experienced something like that. How is she going to react? So I guess the question is, how can students develop resilience and cope with this rejection in healthy ways?
Yeah, yeah. Well, resiliency is the key. Absolutely. You're target on that, right? It's about growing our resiliency. And really thinking about anytime we feel defeated, whether it's because of a test or it's because of a tough conversation we've had or whatever the reason is, right? We've just had a rough day and we feel defeated. One of the ways that you can really build resiliency is to find something in that day to overcome. And it can be absolutely simple. It could be cleaning out a drawer. It could be making the bathroom shine again. It could be getting your laundry all caught up. Whatever it is, right? Is that you are accomplishing a task that makes you feel like, okay, I've won, right? I won here. And that's a great way to build resiliency. It's also important that we're putting the right people around us that's going to speak life into us
Mm.
and not speak words of death into us, because we might feel defeated and then someone hops on that bandwagon and just continues to feed it. And that is not going to be healthy for us.
Mm. That's a really good advice. We really do need to do kind of an inventory of the people that are surrounding us and ask ourselves, are these people really lifting us up or are they dragging us down? And then periodically you might have to do some house cleaning. I know that's not a pleasant thing to think about, but I've had to do that in life sometimes where I'm like, you know what? Like this relationship is just not healthy. Like I'm not enjoying it. It's bringing me down, and I need to just kind of move out of this friend group and into something that's a little bit healthier. So I've had to do that, and that can be tough, especially I think in college. That can be really difficult. And along those same lines, I think students struggle with feelings of not belonging. That could be number one, or just really not being good enough. So, what advice do you have for the college students in terms of dealing with imposter syndrome?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? I think all of us at some point in our life have probably struggled with that.
Hmm.
So just normalizing the fact that this is a season, it's not my life, right? If we think about it's a season that I'm in, maybe I'm struggling in the moment, but I can focus on the fact that this too shall pass, that I won't be in that. And again, that friend group that you have around, the people who are speaking into you. We might not be able to move people out completely, but we can on an emotional level. We can move people out emotionally where we're not investing a lot of time and energy into them, right? And they're speaking life into us so that we can grow through that. But that imposter syndrome or worried about, that fake it till we make it kind of idea,
Hmm.
right? I know I grew up with that. That was my mother's mantra, just fake it till you make it. And I had that in the back of my head or the back of my ear, from her. But who you have around you to encourage you or to challenge you, and those are really helpful.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
your friend is vital. Yeah.
Really good stuff. We talked a little bit about anxiety and stress when we were talking about FASD. But I think the exams and the academic pressure that these college students are under right now, I mean, it is just brutal. It can be debilitating, and it certainly triggers anxiety. Do you have any tips for managing that test anxiety or performance stress in college?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I like to call it the 2 hour rotation. So
Okay.
put an alarm on your phone for every 2 hours, no more than three, that will go off, and you need just a little bit of nutrition, hydration, and sensory input every 2 hours. That will help your brain to stay at its most optimal place so that it can then deal with or process anything else that's going on. So that can look like simply a handful of almonds and a glass of water, and I get up and kind of move around. If we can do proprioceptive sensory input, which is just deep joint pressure, right? That can be helpful. A lot of people will hold the top lip, press on the top lip. That's deep joint pressure or deep pressure, right? That organizes our brain. A lot of times when we're in meetings and we're trying to focus, we will do that,
Uh-huh.
right? You can literally stand in the doorway. You can go to the bathroom and push on the sides of the stall and count to 10. That is deep joint pressure. You can stand up on your tiptoes. You can be careful when you get out of the chair and put a lot of weight on your arms to push yourself up. All of those things are deep joint pressure, and it helps organize your brain for a couple of hours. So it's just important to try to get yourself on that rotation. Anytime you're feeling fragile at all, anytime you've got big tests coming, you've got a big event coming, I would absolutely encourage you hop on that 2 hour rotation, and you'll help your brain stay at its most optimal place.
That's great advice. I really like that a lot. Really important stuff. We talked about looking at that friend group and trying to figure out if the friends are really bringing us up or bringing us down. How can the students learn to set some boundaries with their friends, with their family, even, and maybe even their professors in order to protect their mental health in college?
Yeah, yeah. Well, if excuse me, if you're with someone that you feel drained
Hmm.
after you leave, then that's a pretty sure sign that this person is taking up too much emotional space, right? And so I like to think of it like a dartboard, right? You've got the round circles of the dartboard, and honestly, most of the people that in your life are going to live in that outer round. You may know them, you may speak to them occasionally, but your energy does not go into those folks. And then you have your middle round, and the middle round has more to do with folks that maybe you have lunch with occasionally. Maybe you go and meet them at a coffee shop occasionally, right?
Hmm.
Maybe they know a little bit more about you, and some of your energy goes in there, but not much. And it depends on how how they are feeding into you and where your emotional energy goes. And then that inner circle is really, those are your folks. Those are your peeps, your tribe. Those are people who speak life into you, that will encourage you when you're down, that will lift you up, that's got your back when you're not in the room, right? And if they don't, for any reason, then they have to move out to one of those other circles. It doesn't mean that proximity wise it always happens. Sometimes that's not possible,
Mhm.
but it does need to happen on an emotional level, right? So that
Yeah.
your emotional energy isn't going into that relationship.
Yeah, I like that concentric circles. I like that idea. I think that's really helpful for the students, no doubt about it. All right, listen, I love it, and I know that I love good food. I mean, for me, that's my weakness is going out for really good food. And so, since you're in the Middle Tennessee area, I'm wondering, are there any restaurants that you and your family love to go to so I can go and check it out as well?
Well, we're a big breakfast bunch, so we like Milo's in Portland. Yeah,
Nice,
Milo's is
nice.
a fun little shop that serves great breakfast. They do lunch too, but we like to go for breakfast and coffee there.
I love it. A good breakfast spot with some good coffee. I'm always looking for those recommendations because I agree with you. I love first thing in the morning, that good cup of coffee and a great breakfast. Sometimes that can be hard to find. So I'm going to go and check out Milo's and next time, and I'll let you know what I think. So that's
Absolutely.
really good. All right. So if our listeners, if they want to connect with you, maybe they need some counseling, maybe they want to be a part of your internship program that you offer, maybe they want to book you to speak on their college campus, where should they go to connect with you?
Sure. The best place is to reach me by email, and it's Chris, Chris, at papillioncenter.org, and that's Papillion center.org.
I love it. Fantastic. So reach out to Chris using her email address. And what can I tell you, Chris? You are a treasure. Thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise with our college students. I know your words have a big impact and it really certainly helps them. So thank you for spending some time with us this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate you allowing it.
Of course. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation with Chris, I want you to like this on social media and I want you to share it with your other friends that need to hear her words. But thank you so much for being with us today on this episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. And we will see you next time. Thanks so much for joining us. See ya.